Thank you very much. We will now call the Finance Committee meeting into order. We have a quorum present. To my right, Councilman Dom. To my left, Councilman Greenlee. To his left, President Darrell Clark. And to his left, Councilwoman Blonda Reynolds Brown. And we thank him for sitting in. We'll now ask the clerk to read the title of the bill.
190086, an ordinance amending Title II of the Philadelphia Code entitled City County Consolidation, Chapter 22-300, Property Assessment, by adding language to the Section 2-305, Office of Property Assessment, Chief Assessment Officer, powers and duties requiring that real estate taxes imposed by Title 19 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Finance, Taxes, and Collections, Chapter 19-1300, real estate taxes be levied on the assessed value of taxable real property as established for the immediate preceding stated year and any year in which the audit provided for under subsection 2-305-2S finds that overall property assessments in the city do not meet industry standards for accuracy, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you very much. Chair calls Rob DeVoe, Director of Finance. Before you begin, gentlemen, and we thank you both for being here. Rob DeVoe, Brother Spicer, thank you. We will call on Councilman O, whose bill we are considering, to make his statement.
Thank you very much. I have a little bit of a lengthy statement. I think it's an important statement, so if you'll bear with me, I will go through it. We're holding this hearing because of unlawful, illegitimate property assessments and therefore taxation practices by the City of Philadelphia. It is not up for debate whether the city's property assessments were conducted properly for the tax year 2019. They were not. And everyone from the independent auditor hired by City Council to the City Controller will say so. Take an article in yesterday's Inquirer, for example. To see how bad this situation is, it says Philadelphia must post detailed information on its website, according to law, about how it sets values for the city's 580,000 properties. But despite having been required to do so since 2011, it hasn't. Thus, a taxpayer has limited information about how the city arrived at an assessment or the value assigned to a property and used to calculate the real estate tax bill. That lack of transparency makes it difficult for a taxpayer to understand whether a value is fair and can create a disadvantage when filing an appeal. The city's failure to meet industry standards and be transparent about its property assessment methodology are betrayals of the public trust. Add to that the fact that these below standard assessments have yielded higher property tax revenues for the city, and this is borderline criminal. To be confronted with the fact that this was an inaccurate assessment process with zero transparency that resulted in a significant increase in property taxes for residents, especially those in lower income neighborhoods, and then to say that we can't or shouldn't do anything to rectify the situation is wrong. We can and must nullify these property assessments and use the 2018 tax year property assessments instead. The law department has issued a memo with several arguments about why we can't or shouldn't do this, several of which are faulty. I'll respond to their concerns now. First, the law department says that, quote, the change in the assessment base for a tax year or for tax year 2019 would mean that the lion's share of real estate taxes already paid would have to be recalculated and, in many instances, refunded in part. That practical problem aside, the change by council in the formula for calculating the currently due taxes is not permitted by the Home Rule Charter, end quote. This is a strange argument to make, given that OPA has violated the law by not publishing its own formula. I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that any practical concerns in refunding what taxpayers deserve is just the cost of doing the right thing. We shouldn't betray the public trust further because of logistical concerns. Second, the law department goes on to say that rejecting the 2019 assessments and reverting to the 2018 assessments would, quote, make a mockery, end quote, of the requirement to enact a balanced budget prior to the start of the fiscal year. I'd say that OPA's assessments make a mockery of the requirement to provide uniform, fair assessments upon which the city bases its tax revenue projections and therefore its budget. Besides, we have a budget surplus that would be able to accommodate any losses in this stolen revenue. All of this can be rectified in the coming year's budget or by using our current surplus. The law department is incorrect in suggesting that returning money to taxpayers will leave us without money to balance the current operating budget. City Council's experts estimate that the amount of the city could lose by adopting this ordinance would be in the neighborhood of $43 million, which is a relatively easy difference to account for given the scale of the city's budget. That money, however, makes a big difference to the residents who are rightfully entitled to it, not the city. By the way, my office confirmed with the Board of Revision of Taxes yesterday that as of late February, only 2,000 appeals have been settled and heard thus far for tax year 2019. A whopping over 7,000 cases have not yet been settled or heard. It's March 12th. They will not be done for a very long time, considering that the 7,000 people waiting for a hearing are paying last year's property taxes until their case is settled. I don't think we are all that concerned about expeditiously collecting 2019 property tax revenues. Consider also that there are many people who would have appealed but did not have the proper means to do so, whether due to income or time constraint. The law department then hinges an argument on a minor technicality. They say that the audit performed by council, while legitimate, would not meet the requirements of this bill because the auditing firm was not named by ordinance. The Philadelphia Code calls for council to, by separate ordinance, name the firm to be engaged for this purpose. Therefore, I've met this minor concern by amending this bill to name J.F. Ryan Associates Incorporated in the legislative findings of the bill. Third, the law department points out that, quote, the bill on its face does not apply to school district taxes, end quote. My office has worked with the City Council's technical staff to amend the text of the bill, not the title, to ensure that the bill no longer makes mention of Chapter 19-1300 of the Code. This is another small technicality that has been addressed by amendment. Fourth, the law department insists that property taxes must be based on current assessments and that any assessments other than 2019's would be improper to use. This to me would be a valid argument had OPA's assessments met industry standards and followed state law. Seeing as they demonstrably did not, I have no qualms with rejecting them. Perhaps if the city was so concerned with lawfully imposing taxes on residents, it should have followed the law in compiling the assessments. Finally, the law department makes a claim with zero supporting evidence that the bill could raise concerns about uniformity. They write, quote, to be sure, uniformity does not require the city to use inaccurate assessments, but uniformity likely would not allow us to discard assessments because their alleged inaccuracy just to replace them with assessments that are less accurate, end quote. They continue, quote, it is very possible or even likely that the current year's assessments, inaccurate though they may be, are closer to accurate than the prior year's assessments, end quote. There's no proof for this claim by the law department. The best argument they have is that is, quote, likely. Rather than deal with hypotheticals such as this, let's focus on what we know for certain. This was a tragically, unlawfully flawed assessment. This council has taken action to evaluate its accuracy and identify errors to fix for future assessments. We have halted future assessments until they improve, but that still does not address the fact that homeowners have been saddled with unjustifiably dramatic property tax increases this year. The only thing worse than the city imposing such burdens on its residents, which have caused many people to wonder if they'll be able to keep their homes and remain in the city, would be if council were to reject the opportunity to do the right thing and not pass this bill. In layman's terms, there are righteous thieves and unrighteous thieves, but they're just thieves. I don't see how we can continue to argue this point. The city acknowledges the council has found, the third party has said the assessments are below industry standard. They're just below industry standard. They are not legitimate assessments. They are 10.5 higher than the year before. To then say that there are minor technicalities or other reasons why the city should not reject these assessments and therefore these taxes, I can't imagine what that could possibly be. But for whatever reason, the city seems determined to hang on the money that it knows it cannot hang on to. Why is that the case? And so, yes, we wouldn't have to have this hearing if the administration would take care of this the way they're supposed to. But being that they have not, this council is the check and balance on the administration. We're going to have to deal with the improper assessments and reject the taxes for this year, and with that, ensure that the taxes are done properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We thank Councilman O for his statement and his presence. And is there anyone else who would like to make a statement before we allow the administration to testify? We'll get to you, Madam Shikamba. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rob DeBow and Mr. Michael Piper.
Morning, Chair Blackwell, members of the committee. I'm Rob Dubo, Finance Director. I'm here to testify on Bill 190086, which in the event of an audit of property assessments finds that those assessments do not meet industry standards for accuracy, would require that property taxes be calculated on the assessed value of the prior year. As Councilman O stated, the Law Department has advised us that the bill presents many legal issues, and I know you've all seen their memo. So I won't be arguing legal points, but I would like to take the opportunity to review the steps that OPA is taking this year to further improve the quality of assessments and best reflect changes in the market. While the city's property assessment system has made great strides since AVI was implemented, we've heard the concerns you voiced and raised in your audit. As a result, we've asked OPA's outside consultant to develop a set of recommendations to improve OPA's procedures. That consultant, Robert Glaudeman, is affiliated with the International Association of Assessment Officers, has over 40 years in the assessment field, regularly consults with other major jurisdictions, and has worked with OPA for over 10 years. He made 12 substantial recommendations around staffing and data needs, transparency, and an implementation plan. OPA is committed to adopting these recommended changes to improve its processes and ensure public confidence in assessments. The recommendations are as follows. Establish a 5-member sales validation team to validate both residential and non-residential properties. Hire additional modelers with expertise in data analysis, property appraisal, statistical methods, geographic information systems, and computer systems. Appoint a team to undertake a project focused on assignment of construction grades and condition codes for all residential properties. Critically examine the availability and consistency of commercial property grade and condition codes. Designate a unit to be responsible for income data collection and screening and maintain that data in a standard format in a central repository such as the CAMA system. Continue to refine spatial and proximity variables, maintain the flexibility to provide by current valuation methods the transition to the CAMA system, routinely produce standardized ratio reports for internal review at critical points in the valuation cycle, document and better explain the valuation process publicly. We expect to publish a document outlining OPA's assessment methodology later this week. And after OPA certifies the 2020 values to the state by March 31st, we'll be publishing a ratio study that examines how assessments compare to valid sales. Develop an action plan and timetable, identify staff to ensure recommendations are implemented. To allow OPA time to implement these changes and move forward with CAMA project as scheduled, Mr. Gladman has also recommended that OPA temporarily use a valuation methodology known as trending. So for FY20, OPA will conduct a market trending valuation, appropriately trending existing tax year 19 values by property type and geographic area in an effort to keep property values tied to the market while OPA adopts its recommendations. OPA will resume annual mass assessment valuations when the above recommendations have been implemented. Property owners will still have the ability to file first level reviews or formal appeals to the Board of Revision of Taxes during this period if they wish to challenge their assessments. I believe the recommendations will further improve the quality of our assessments and provide more information to the public, and we're working to implement them as quickly as possible. That concludes my testimony, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Councilman Greenlee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Mr. DeBow, I know you said you didn't want to comment on the legal aspect. I get that. Have you looked at all at the impact, in your opinion, if the bill was passed, what it would have on our budget as we speak?
I haven't calculated the exact dollar amount. I heard the councilman's $43 million.
So you haven't broken that down at all as far as the possibilities?
No.
Okay, all right. I know you talk about the recommendations you have here, and I guess I know the answer before I ask it, but because obviously there's a lot of concern out there that's generated this bill from the general public, and I guess we'll hear from a few today, right, about the inaccuracies, unfairness, if you will, of the assessments, at least with some people. Do you feel that these recommendations, you say, will address, if not all, vast majority of those concerns, and that we'll have a fairer system?
We think that the system has gotten better each year, and that this will kind of make that improvement even faster. So yes, we think these will be really important steps to improve the system.
Okay. I know a lot of people say it hasn't improved fast enough, but that's another question.
Understood.
Just lastly, and I know you talk about the CAMA system.
Yes.
And we've heard about for a while, any day now, the CAMA system is coming. Are you quite confident that this time, and I don't know, Mr. Piper can answer this better, that the CAMA system is going to be implemented, and exactly when would that be?
We are. It will be implemented in about a year, which is the same schedule we talked about last year. It's been on the same schedule for the last couple of years. There was a hiccup maybe 3 years ago when a vendor we were working with decided to go to another jurisdiction, but since then we've been on schedule. And I'll let Mike give any more details.
Sure. Good morning, Councilman Greenlee,
morning,
Madam Chairwoman, and members of council. I'm Michael Piper, the City of Philadelphia's Chief Assessment Officer. As Mr. DeBow said, the CAMA issue has been one that can't happen fast enough for us either.
I think we all agree with that.
Yeah, and you mentioned it can't happen fast enough. It's supposed to happen, last year or a few years ago. The fact that we don't have a CAMA system actually affects all the other processes that have been found by our consultant to be lacking in OPA, because the resources that a CAMA system would free up would allow us, for instance, to have something posted on our website in detail and a lot sooner, like they do in DC. And when we actually have the CAMA system, it's not just a system to automate what we do. It affects every part of our processes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
Please, to the Commissioner of this department, where are we with regards to appeals? How far are we behind, and what is the number?
So for the formal appeals that the Board of Revision of Taxes handles, for 2019, we've received a little over 9,000, I think about 9,500, and BRT has gotten through about, as Councilman O stated, about 2,000 appeals as of last week, leaving about 7,000, 7,500 still open. In terms of the first level review or informal appeals, we received about 20,000, and we have processed all but about maybe 1,500.
So pause there for a moment. When you say 2019, does that include documents that were left at your department in 2018? For 2018 appeals? Where are we with 2018 appeals?
The 2018 appeals, for the most part, I would say we're about 95% finished, except for the number of appeals that are being stayed because they're part of the commercial lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia. Those are in limbo right now because they have to be addressed through other means, through the lawsuit.
So the 5% is a part of the commercial lawsuit?
No. I say besides those that are part of the commercial lawsuit, there's about 5% still hanging out there.
And so do they fall in any particular category, or they are just based on when they arrived at the office?
They would be all property categories.
Forgive me?
All property categories.
All property categories. Right. So what is the protocol when a citizen brings in an appeal process and leaves it with a conscientious staff person at the reception desk? Because not all of them are that. Mm-hmm. I intentionally have delivered appeals on behalf of citizens just to see how people are treated.
Right.
And so what are the protocols?
So if a taxpayer brings in an appeal, a formal appeal to the OPA that is meant for the Board of Revision of Taxes, we can either direct them back to the BRT's offices, which are right down the hall from us, or we can forward it, but we have to try to make sure that communication then is between the taxpayer and the Board of Revision of Taxes, because the board has deadlines that they have to adhere to. If the taxpayer brings in a first level review, then we can speak a little bit more coherently about the deadlines and what the process is, but we'll accept it as timely filed, as long as it's filed within the window of opportunity that we provide after we send out the notice of change.
So are time-stamped a part of the protocol or no?
They're not part of the OPA's protocol for accepting first level review, because the first level review applications are, as per the instructions on the notice, to be mailed to an outside P.O. box in which a vendor actually picks them up and processes them.
I see. And should citizens receive copies of the documents that they leave? Can they be assured that once they drop off those documents, they will find their way to the appropriate professional in the department to process those documents?
Yes, Councilwoman. What happens is we send the taxpayer a notice saying, essentially, we've received your first level review application and are processing it.
Okay, so then I should take it as an anomaly that the woman who opened the door, I handed it off to her and she just walked away. I'm like, do I get a receipt? Do I get anything that says I officially dropped this off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, because of the process, if you ask for a timestamp copy, if you specifically ask for it, we would provide it. Our customer service unit is prepared to do that, but...
So it's not a protocol then?
No.
One has to ask for it?
Right, because, as I said, typically, as per the instructions in the process, those first level review applications are mailed into an outside P.O. box.
Okay. So you're 95% finished with all appeals that have come in from last year and up to March 1?
Not for 2019, but
Not
for tax year 2018.
For tax year 2018?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Okay, then, for the three families where I dropped that off, I will give them a call to see if they indeed have been before your staff or board over there, and circle back if they have not, if they are part of that 5% that's not done yet.
Okay, and you can always have them email me or call me directly, and we can find out. That is pretty much, the communication I'll have with someone during the week anyway. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman O, then Councilman Dahl.
Yes, thank you very much. I have numerous examples. You do too. For people who can't see, these are pretty much identical houses on a street in Philadelphia, 2 stories. The market value in 2018 for the house on the left was $99,600. The house on the left, the market value was $89,200. And then this year, the house on the left, the market value went from $99,600 to $363,400. Triple. Whereas the house next to it went from $89,200 to $88,600. I mean, they are identical. Identical houses. They look like they're worth about $100,000 to me. And I imagine the people in the house cannot pay $363,400 in property taxes. They're probably on a fixed income. And so while the city is working on fixing the process, they got to pay the taxes or they lose their house. That's not just true for this year. It's been true for every year. Every year we have had the same discussion. I think we're going to have the same discussion at budget time. And the question is, what do you need? What needs to be done? There's slots that aren't filled. Do you have the software? Do you have the technology that you need? And this is an administration problem. I know we have a chief assessment officer. I don't think it's his fault. I think it's a fault of the administration, because the administration had every opportunity to fix this, and we still have no published formula. We've been asking for a published formula. I've asked in 2014, 15, 16, and 17. I finally said, I don't think there is a formula. So that's not legal. The issue that we're dealing with is that you don't want to give the money back. I don't know why you want to keep the money. You got a $5 billion budget this year. Why won't you give the money back? Do you think you're supposed to keep this money? You're not. It's fundamentally flawed. I will say, me personally, and you can respond, you've been here too long. I started out as an assistant DA. I've done criminal defense. The thing about criminals, they can't seem to understand that they don't have a right to somebody else's money. And there's no greater sinner than the righteous sinner. They always figure they got something better to do with your money than you. No one can argue that the assessments are incorrect and inaccurate. Whatever the reason, and I hope it gets improved, but right now they're inaccurate. And they're hurting a lot of people. We don't have an assessment of 2018. I think that would probably show the same result, that it's flawed too. But we do have one for 2019. And since we have one for 2019 that says the assessments are inaccurate, therefore the taxes that people are having to pay right now are inaccurate, They are incorrect. Whatever you're planning to do with this money, you can't keep it. And there's going to be a lot of mumbo jumbo, and I know there's not a lot of people in this room, but there's a lot of people watching this process. They will know this process. They care deeply about this process. They're about to lose their homes, or they have lost their homes. They're at their wits' end. Don't be deceived. This is a room full of people, and they want to know if the government, their government, is going to do the right thing. The government cannot do the wrong thing bold in front of everybody and just start stealing people's money. Because if it does, then we have no faith in anything the government's doing. How will the government, when it's stealing people's money and property, claim to regulate DHS, the police, other entities? How do we know that the government just doesn't have a better plan for us, our children, our homes, our businesses? You cannot possibly say that you're going to keep this money, and you're not going to look at the fact that the assessments are wrong. And the council people can't possibly table this in good conscience. It's wrong. Everybody says so. Even council's own independent audit. The mayor agrees. He's put a freeze on it, but he's put a freeze on it while all these people with incorrect assessments are being put out of their homes. Well, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Councilman Dom?
So I obviously strongly disagree with many of your characterizations.
Oh my goodness.
I let you talk.
Yeah,
I let you talk. Can you let me talk now?
Yeah, I'm going to let you talk.
Okay, so please do. So we do our own analysis of our assessments, right, that shows that they fall within industry standards. If you actually looked at the details of the controller's audit, it showed improvement every year, and it showed that the last year the coefficient of dispersion was right at industry standards. We are going through steps to improve the process to make it even better. So I just disagree with your characterization. People can appeal and do appeal their assessments. Because of legislation that council enacted, they pay their old tax while that appeal is being heard, or well, they're waiting for it to be heard. We have a number of relief programs that we've put in place to help people pay their taxes. So there are a number of steps we've taken.
Are you finished?
I am.
Listen, I have great respect for you and for Michael Piper. I do. I have a job to do. You have a job to do. But at the end of the day, what I like about our military is they don't swear an oath to the president. They do to the Constitution. Your oath is not to the mayor or this administration. It's to the Constitution and to the people. You are bold-faced saying continuously that the system is being improved, but it's not accurate. You're talking about coefficients that haven't been published. Haven't been published, aren't published. And you're talking about the fact that you find something different and acceptable when an independent audit has found that it is not. And the mayor has halted the process, halted it at 10.5% above on a citywide basis the last set of assessments. It's indefensible, Rob, indefensible.
The coefficients actually are published. They're published in our 5-year plan. We also submit our assessments to STEB, the State Tax Equalization Board, and that has also shown improved accuracy over time. I think we were at, what, 98% in the latest STEB report?
Over the past year, yes.
Right, so that's not us. That's an independent look at our numbers. So there are outside validators of what we do.
So you're just not going to acknowledge the 7,000 appeals, the many examples of lack of uniformity, inconsistency, triple the assessment values right next to another house that has been lowered. You're not acknowledging any of that.
We are acknowledging the appeals. We're acknowledging that out of 340,000 changes, there were 9,500 appeals, and they all go through the appeals process, and they have the ability to pay their old taxes until those appeals are resolved. We're also acknowledging that the system can be improved, which is why we're taking all of the steps that I outlined in my testimony.
Are the 2019 assessments accurate?
They are, our analysis says they're within industry standards, yes.
Are you accepting the independent audit?
So we think that, and we wrote, and you saw it, we wrote a response to that audit. We think there were flaws with the audit. We also think, though, that it raised some legitimate concerns, and that's why we're going through the steps we're going through to improve our process.
So you oppose the bill?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good morning.
Morning.
I just want to make sure I have all the facts on the table. So I just want to start out by, my understanding is there was 128,000 properties that were reduced in market value, and I thought it was 370,000 that were increased in the last assessment. Is that accurate?
128 that were reduced or saw no change, correct? The majority of those saw some
No
reduction.
change.
Yes.
And then 370,000 were increased, roughly?
That's
right,
about right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And then where we sit today, because we had that briefing on Friday, I thought the numbers were like 9,500 are still, is it a first level review or?
There were 9,500 appeals to the BRT. There were about 20,000 appeals?
About
First level
20,000
reviews?
informal appeals.
Yes.
So
And all but 1,300 of those have been resolved in one way or the other.
Right.
So 20,000 people raised their hand and said, I have a question on my taxes, and now you're down to 9,500.
No, 20,000, there's 9,500 BRT appeals, 20,000 informal appeals, and technically they're independent of each other, although some filed both.
Okay.
But of the 9,500, there are about 7,000 of those still left. And of course, those are the ones that tend to be addressed after we've addressed a lot of the informal appeals. Out of that 20,000, about 1,300 are still outstanding.
So would you say in general that we need to still address 1,300 of the first level appeals and about 7,500 in total? So 9,000 people we need to address, basically.
Correct.
Correct, unless there's some overlap between the 1,300 and the 7,500.
Yes.
And for those 9,000 people, this is like a nightmare because they feel they're overpaying, which Councilman O is referring to. But in the big picture, if
But they have the ability to pay their 18
old
taxes
tax,
while they're
right,
under appeal.
Right. But in the big picture, it's still less than 3% have appealed the tax increases in the big picture. But for those...
The 9,500, that's right, to the BRT.
Right.
Yes.
And then, I mean, I kind of feel this is all this stuff that's been going on about OPA and the audits was brought on because the increases were so dramatic, 10.5%. And if we had, over the 3 or 4 year period, just increased 2% a year and kept up with the market, we might not have seen this, you know, flurry of activity of people getting very upset, because to have an increase of 10.5% on average of assessments is kind of like a tax increase of 10.5%. It's the same thing. And here's the other question I have for you. Our budget for OPA is $14.6 million. The real estate we manage, valued maybe as of 2 years ago, was $170 billion. $170 billion. To give us some context, the two largest development companies in the city manage between 5 and 10 billion. Our budget is 14.6 million. I guess my question is, are we managing our resources of the 14.6 compared to the value of the real estate we own, and how does that compare to other cities, and are we allocating enough dollars to manage this portfolio correctly?
Yeah, so one of the things that you'll see in the 20 budget is some additional resources for OPA to make sure there's enough resources to have the independent validation unit, to have more modelers, and to get some outside help with data purification. So we think that will all help, and we think with that will be actually for staffing at industry standards.
That's correct. And just to kind of, to your point, Councilman Dom, and something Councilman O said, I think a lot of problems that the consultant, our own consultant, pointed out, it's not the OPA or the Chief Assessment Officer or the administration. It's resources. It's resources that don't affect the department independently. You know, the lack of resources, as I said about but it's not just CAMA, but it's, you know, the modeling and the problem with some of the data. All of those things tend to increase when we have the resources to improve each one of them.
So I guess in general, I'd like to see us, if we have some sort of an informal survey of maybe the top 10 cities and how they're allocating their portfolio in relationship to their budget. I would be curious as to where we stand, and if we could figure out what they're doing in best practices that maybe would be of help to us.
Yep. Yes, we can do that. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. More questions? More comments on this bill? Okay, gentlemen, we'll call our next panel to testify. Linda Colwell-Smith, Vice President, Home Circle Civic Association. Miguel Sarfati Larson, Vice Chair, Woodland Terrace Homeowners Association. Madeline Shakumba, North of Washington Avenue Coalition. And Marnie Lagery, constituent. Thank you for being here. You may begin your testimony in any order. Just identify yourself for the record if you would.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have written testimony from Bonnie A. Pugh, Esquire, homeowner, and that will be made part of the record. Thank you. Identify yourself, whoever would like to start.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Linda Caldwell-Smith. I am Vice President of the Home Circle Civic Association. Home Circle Civic is a medium-sized group. We're located in Northeast Philadelphia in the general vicinity of Nazareth Hospital, from, I guess it would be Home on the Boulevard over to Home and Academy, and 2 miles either side of that. Why I'm here today is this legislation is important to my members. And as I note in my written testimony, the hottest topic at any of our meetings, regardless of whatever speaker we bring in, is property taxes. You know, how they've gone up, how unfair they are, and, you know, we're paying more, getting less in city services. I mean, my members know that when they come to one of our meetings, it's safe to say whatever they want, and they do. I mean, when we have our meeting in 2 weeks, I'm going to hear about these two. There are notices of an increase in the gas costs and also in the electric. And I got these in my bill yesterday. So I know we're going to hear about this as well, but it's not our topic this morning. Our civics members are mainly senior citizens and families, families with a lot of kids, actually. The focus on property taxes is very understandable, and every other tax, because every penny counts for these folks. And our members do, for the most part, pay their property taxes on time and in full. But they do not want to pay anything, any tax that they think is unfair, inaccurate, especially when it comes to their property taxes. And that's why we are supporting this bill, which would amend Title, well, we know what it would do. It would amend the Philadelphia Code to require that, you know, the assessments reflect the proper industry standards. And we agree. Why should property owners have to pay a higher assessment if the process which generated this increased tax violates the city code and could lead to an inaccurate tax bill? Our members would not want to pay such an unfair assessment, especially if they do not understand how it was generated. They read the Inquirer, they saw yesterday's story and any other previous stories. So paying this previous year's property tax is an acceptable alternative. On behalf of our members, neighbors, and homeowners, the Home Circle Civic Association urges the passage and enactment of Bill number 190086. It's all about the optics and about folks and their money. I know we're going to hear about it, and I know my members will be very concerned about this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, let's continue.
I suppose I'm next. I'm Margarita Larson, also known as Magali. I thank you very much, Mrs. Blackwell and council people, for this opportunity. I just have an example to add to the erratic nature of the property assessment. I made a statement, I will not take your time uselessly, and Councilman O had a more powerful case to present. But our case is interesting to illustrate what the property assessment does wrong, because we have a very unitary block. Councilwoman Blackwell knows it well. All the houses are the same, except the corners. They were built in 1860 by a developer and an architect. They're very old, very hard to maintain. So the property taxes, as she said, are very significant. Now, what happened is that this year is that the property taxes went up for only 2 of the identical units, whereas for the others they went down. So I explained in my statement that there are identical units, and you have the pictures in front of you, and there are 5 twins on the outside, 6 on the even. That's 22 properties. We should take the corners out. As I showed in the picture, they are much larger lots and they're different. And we should also, and that means 4 corners off, and we should also take the 3 single-family units out, because they are, for a reason that escapes me, valued much higher than the multifamily and the commercial properties. So we end up with 15 identical multifamily twins on the street. And I showed you the pictures of my twin and that across the street that belongs to Mrs. Daniels to show how identical they are. They are all multifamilies. The houses are too big and we rent them. So what happened this year is that 80% of those 15, that is 12, were reduced by 2.76%, whereas 2 of them, Mrs. Daniels and our house, were increased by 56 and 55%. That was modified. We were notified 3 days before the BRT hearing, which has not yet given its results. And so we were finally increased by 20%, and it's still not uniform and still unacceptable. So I just wanted to bring that case and to explain that we really feel we do a lot to maintain those houses and to remain in that neighborhood with a tremendously powerful neighbor that pays no taxes. I don't have to name it. It's University of Pennsylvania and all the hospitals. They have an enormous amount of land, and they expand aggressively. They pay no taxes. So it's a great effort to maintain that neighborhood, and we feel that the city is punishing the inhabitants that do a lot to stay in it and sustain it. Thank you very much for your attention. We support this bill, of course.
Thank you.
Hi, Madeline Chicumba, North of Washington Avenue Coalition. You know, it's a fun of me to come in here.
Identify yourself first, Ms. Chicumba.
Madeline Chicumba, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Am I too close to the mic? Oh, that's better?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Madeline Chicumba, representing North of Washington Avenue Coalition. It's an affront of me to come in here, speak to City Council, and find you doing other things and listening to us. I mean, it's really, I'm sitting up here watching you. I mean, why are we coming in here if you're going to be doing other things and listening to what we got to tell you? I'm really upset with that. Anyway, let me get back to my testimony. One, I sent some things in. You might not understand what they are. Everybody got them who's in here. Turn to the page that says 500 Regatta Drive. You have that in front of you? This is an abated property. It sold for $436,420 in May 2011. From 2013 all the way up to 2018, the assessment on this property was $405,500 at the most. 2019, they finally jumped to $445,000. And it's abated, exempt improvement, $378,250. I'd like to know why this property was never assessed at its full market value from day one in 2011. Well, I guess so, because as Mr. O pointed out, they too busy tapping into poor folk homes and raising them ridiculously high that they can't get to these rich folks who could afford to pay their doggone taxes. And this is throughout. You know where this property is at? It's in my neighborhood, Graduate Hospital area. And you think this is one of many condos in the naval home off of Grays Ferry. There must be at least 500 condos in there. And if you were to check all of them, they are all under-assessed. Under-assessed, not over. Another property in my area, Lombard Street. I sent that to you too. 2100 block of Lombard Street. That's another thing, under-assessed. I'm glad Ms. O pointed out to you about over-assessment in the poor neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods that should be paying their taxes are getting under-assessed. Now you tell me what's going on with OPA. I even highlighted some of them for you. I won't go through them for you. You can check them out yourself. These properties on Lombard Street are worth millions of dollars. And if you were to go up on their property tax, they'd be down here screaming bloody murder, because you know why? They are assessed at maybe $500,000, $600,000 when they should be assessed at $1 million. So if you try to jump to $1 million, what? You qualify them for loot. And don't tell me, oh, they're too rich, they won't qualify for loot. Are you kidding? They got too many scams going. They put a kid name on there and whatever name they want, and they'll qualify for loot, because you ain't got nobody in revenue to keep up with what's going on in loot in the first place. And that's why they get away with it. I asked you not to pass the loop bill when I was here the last time, but you wouldn't listen. You said 150%. You should have left it at 300%, because in order to reach the actual value property on some of these properties, you're going to have to go up 300, 400%. Otherwise, you'd be for years trying to reach that $1 million level. This bill has got to be passed. You've got to freeze this stuff. Otherwise, you're letting people get away with not paying the taxes that they should be paying. And I mean, my whole area is loaded with this mess. This is just a simple example of what's going on in my area, the affluent area they call it, of not paying their taxes. And then you go over here to these poor folks and want them to pay for what these affluent people are not paying. I'm sick of this stuff. I told you time and time again. Also on this loop bill, you need some kind of penalty. The penalty is that these people, who some of them, and they're rich folks who are going to be qualifying for loop, especially in my area on Bainbridge Street, because they meet that 150% level, they're going to try and go on forever to the next generation, the next generation, the next generation, where you have it written. All they got to do is put somebody's name on the doggone deed, maybe a kid's name, and then when it comes down, when they die, they don't indicate that the person who was visually on it is dead. Oh, his name's on there. Go to the next one. You got to have some kind of penalty, so that these people, when they get caught, if they ever get caught, have to pay the city back all the taxes that they're supposed to pay in the beginning. That's the one I'm looking for a penalty on. I'm sick of you people passing these bills. Maybe it's because of the election year that you're doing this crap. And you've got to stop doing this mess. I'm so sick of it, I'm tired. I didn't come here prepared with a written statement. Why? Because I didn't know what I was going to say. Okay? I just got up here and started talking, because I am so crap with this crap. And then you didn't even listen to me when I told you about a week ago about the loop bill. You passed that. Now you're going to have to clean up that mess, because the city's going to be using millions of dollars on properties that are worth millions of dollars, but being assessed way below their actual value. You're losing millions already because of OPA. And I showed you, 2013, these properties are under-assessed. And now it's 2019, and they're still under-assessed?
And the others are over-assessed.
Yeah, and the others are over-assessed. What the hell is going on around here? And you know, my mother had a statement saying, if you ain't lying, you're flying. And since you ain't flying, and they sitting, they lying. Okay?
I would like to add something if Mrs. Black...
Go But no, go ahead.
I didn't say one thing which struck me at the BRT hearing as so incredible that I couldn't speak, which doesn't happen too often. But at the BRT hearing, we were confronted with comparables. Until then, we thought that uniformity applied to this block that is uniform. It is supposed to be some sort of architectural landmark because it's all the same, right? So it's a good case. Well, so the assessors brought up comparables. And the comparables, as I pointed out in my statement, have larger lots of 5 blocks away where there are fewer students, which makes it more desirable, et cetera, et cetera. However, the logic is that if you have comparables, they apply to the whole block. And 80% of the properties with the same comparables were reduced, whereas 2 of them, 20%, were increased by 20% after reduction, after first level appeal. 20% is above the median. So I wanted to point out that they use their comparables in the weirdest and most erratic way that as a teacher of sociology I would never have accepted. Excuse me for adding this.
That's fine.
Thank you, Ms. Larson.
Can I finish now? Okay. Also, you must pass this bill. Our schools are suffering because of the lack of real estate taxes being obtained. And we're going to suffer even more. 5, 10 years, when you pass this loop bill, you made it so that people will not have to, which I helped pass. Okay. I didn't not deny it. But that was because my property went up 1,000%. You told these people they go up 150%. Now, once they get on loop, what happened? They are frozen in that loop amount. So they haven't been paying the assessed amount in the first place. So now their amount is frozen. And how many years that going to go on? I don't know. But if you don't pass this bill, you're going to be in serious trouble on collecting taxes. Because these people won't be paying the taxes. And their property, their assessment keep going up to $1 million. But they won't be paying taxes on $1 million. Be paying what, $650,000? For how many years? 10, 15 years? I told you what the problem was with loop when I came here. Also, I'm telling you now, you're tying OPA hands with this loop bill. If they go up more than 150%, which they have to, in order to bring these things in line with what's going on, they're going to have to go up 200%, maybe even more, because so many of these properties are under-assessed, especially in my area. Now, if my area is affluent, can you imagine what's going on in Queen Village? You need to look at some of these affluent areas. Rittenhouse, all them areas, all these abated properties that are being under-assessed. Abated properties being under-assessed. Why are you under-assessing these abated properties? They ain't paying taxes anywhere in the amount. Are they? I don't think so, because it's abated. I told you about Ricardo Drive. Give me a break. I'm tired of paying taxes. You know, I'm on the loop. Yeah, I'm on the loop. But I told you before, you should have left it the way it was so you give OPA the chance to correct these values on under-assessed properties and to correct the values on those who are over-assessed. Please pass this bill, because you're going to be in trouble come 5 years from now when these properties are $1 million and you ain't collecting nothing but a few $100,000 of assessed market value. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Beck.
Thank you all very much. We have now a Cora Turpin who wants to testify. Is there anyone else who would like to testify? Cora Turpin. Thank you very much. Otherwise, this will be the last person to testify on our bill. Thank you. Good morning. Please identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony.
I'm Dr. Cora Turpin. I live in Northern Liberties. I would support this bill and any bill that will stop some of the cost of this AVI. I am living in a neighborhood where they are now building $1 million homes. For those of us who used to be middle class, and are retired on fixed incomes, even an actual assessment of our property taxes, which will go up and have gone up every year because of the expensive buildings that are in our neighborhood. Developers are getting tax breaks not only on building new buildings, but are also on renovating old buildings, so that none of our neighborhoods is safe from the increase of taxes. I am a part of the Concerned Senior Citizens of Philadelphia. We are on fixed incomes. Some of us have been on fixed incomes for 20 years. And those of us who live in these areas that are impacted by the AVI, such as the River Wards, Northern Liberties, Grays Ferry, and now other parts of the city, are finding it extremely difficult to meet our tax burden along with our medical burdens. I have asked since September, at every hearing I can get to freeze the AVI for people 65 and older. They're not employable anymore. They can no longer increase their income, and that little 2% they give you perhaps on Social Security is not going to cover anything. I would like to remind our council people that the stress of losing your home and becoming homeless when you are a senior citizen can be so overwhelming as to cause your demise. You already have a guy here on every council session who's been complaining about you taking his home, 25 years ago in Logan? You've almost driven him to the brink of insanity because the stress of losing your home is that great. I am asking again to freeze that AVI, regardless of income, for people 65 and older. Like I said, even when you get it right, it's going to go up every year. Developing costs never go down, because if they do, the business people stop building. People on fixed incomes cannot absorb those increases. I would appreciate someone bringing this to a hearing of the communities so you can better understand the hardships you are causing your older citizens, and quite frankly, eventually yourselves. Because no matter what your income is today, in 20 years, it will not be worth a lot. The attrition and the amount of money that you have to pay for things is going to go up so greatly that your buying power is going to greatly decrease, whatever you're making today. I have seen it happen. It is happening to my people in my neighborhood. They have gone from a tax from under $1,000, and now they are being charged $8,000. They're old, unemployable, and they're living on the edge of losing their homes. Thank you for your attention, and I certainly hope to see some very positive action in this direction.
Thank you very much. We thank you, Dr. Turpin, for your testimony. Is anyone else to testify on this bill? We thank you very much. We're going to enter into our stated meeting and conclude our hearing. Give us one moment. All right, the chair will call on Councilman Greenlee for a motion with regard to the amendment to Bill number 190086. Hold on until we try to get us our quorum. Thanks. Bill number 190086 will be held to the call of the chair. We will now enter into a hearing with regard to another issue considering community college and the Finance Committee and Global Opportunities. Councilman O will chair that committee, and we ask all those who will be here for that committee to please come to chambers. People have been waiting, and we want to do that as quickly as we can. I thank my colleagues. Thank you, Councilman Greenlee, Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds-Brown. Those who are here, we would like to begin as soon as possible.
We'll just start.
Thank you. You want to switch?